Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special edition of Let's Give It a Voice at the Sunday Show with myself, A. Simbeng. Today, we have a powerful team of ladies here with me on the show, and we are all ladies today, and we have a special topic to talk about. Each and every one of us on this show today, we have something in common, and that thing in common is bereavement. July is annually regarded as Bereaved Parents Awareness Month, a month dedicated to raising awareness of the support necessary when one endures the devastating loss of a child. So, we are having the second episode of a three-part series on bereavement because July is Bereaved Parents Awareness Month. So, at the Sunday Show, we thought it was a good idea. We have a series of discussions on this topic, bereavement, because it's an area where most people avoid to talk about. We all know death is inevitable. It's something that would happen, but it happens at different times. It affects people differently when it happens, and people grieve differently. So, our topic on bereavement today is supporting individuals during bereavement. So I just want to welcome each and every one of you watching. I am A. Simbeng and I am the host today. So if you've just joined in, share the broadcast and invite your friends to watch because our intention today is to create a conversation, to start a conversation on this topic, which most often people regard as a taboo topic. We would like people to talk about death as any other conversation that every other person has in their daily life. And by so doing, we will be raising awareness, we will be educating, we will be empowering and inspiring, and then giving hope to anyone who has faced the devastating effects of child loss. And so I will just introduce my guests in the panel today. So Gwen, you're welcome once more.
Thank you.
Yeah. Welcome so much, Sister V. Vivi.
AC, it's so good to be here and nice to meet you, Gwen.
Same here. Nice to meet you.
I
Yeah.
like the yellow, red, and blue. I think we all remember.
Oh yeah, it matches. What a
That's
coincidence.
true.
Yeah. Yeah. So and having this discussion today, we want to help every parent or anyone who has lost a daughter or a son at any stage in their lives. It may be during pregnancy, it may be shortly after pregnancy, it may be some years or several years after the birth of a child. But once we continue talking about this topic, giving a voice to the topic, it will make it less emotional and less make people feel comfortable, feel free talking about this topic.
I'll pass over to Gwen to give us a brief introduction of yourself once more, because you were here on the first episode of this show. So we'll hand over to you.
I don't know. Do you hear? Does it play back to you, or is it just me?
It plays back, so that's why I took this off.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, I am going, like you said. We did the first segment of the show. I'm a mother of two. Lost Corey 3 years ago to a brain cancer, and yeah, thank God I have Courtney now. And tomorrow is actually Corey's birthday, and we're thinking of ways to celebrate his birthday tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but it just plays back.
There's a little bit of a feedback echo, but we can hear you clearly. Okay. When I'm talking, does it echo? Just faintly. It's okay though. We can live with it. Okay, that's fine. So today we are on the second episode of a three-part series, which we will be discussing on the support that can be given to a parent during bereavement. So we have three guests today. That's yourself, Sister Viola, Gwen, and then there's Mary Abanga, who will soon be coming onto the show. She's just a little bit late. So we are going to continue with our show. Then I'll hand over to each and every one of you to give us a brief explanation of how you are related to this topic. And before we dive into our questions, over to you, Sister V.
Thank you so much, AC, for having me on your show. I'll never forget you reaching out to me. I was pleasantly surprised. I also had no idea that July was devoted to the month of bereavement. And I love the fact that you've picked this topic, which seems to center around when mothers and fathers, because fathers often get forgotten from this equation, lose a child. And Gwen, I am so sorry for your loss. It's a pleasure to meet you. I suppose you want me to share my story. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. When I was 19 years old, living in the UK, I got pregnant. And for majority of the pregnancy, I think my mind was somewhere else or in denial, because by the time my mother found out, I was already 7 months pregnant. And even at that stage, there was a sense of loss that there is a point in your life that you can't go back to. You can't turn the clock back. But my son was born premature. His name was Isema, and I had the strangest experience at the time that he was leaving my body. I knew he was going to die. And I remember saying to my mom, he's dying. He's not going to be here for long. And they all looked at me strangely. What on earth are you talking about? But when people talk about a mother's intuition, I used to think that it's some mystic thing. But no, there is a unique relationship between a mother and the human beings that can hear your heartbeat from the inside of your body. And you are never the same, whether that person lives or dies. But long story short, Seme was born with hydrocephalus, and within his particular range of this illness, the brain hadn't formed. So he was blind, he was deaf, he was insensate, and he was completely unaware of the world around him. But he had the basic reflexes of human life: eat, sleep, cry, could react to stimulus, but only on an involuntary basis. Now, in the UK in 1985, as a 19-year-old, the issues were compounded by the fact that society finds these things inconvenient, in the same way that death and bereavement are an inconvenience, not just to the individual who's experiencing it, but for everybody else around who now has to come face to face with the emotions and the experience that that person is going through. I've come to understand and realize that death has got nothing to do with the person who has passed away and has everything to do with the individuals who are left behind. Now, you were saying a little bit when we were getting into the preamble of this conversation, AC, that one of the goals is to make it less emotional. With all due respect, I completely don't have that same viewpoint. You know me well from Facebook because you've seen that every year on his birthday and the anniversary of his death, I write a letter to my son. Gwen, if my son was alive today, July 6th would have made him 35 years old. He died when he was 7 months old. Time has moved on, and I am still defining myself through the backdrop of his death. There's a tendency in our culture to try to make people feel better by telling them what they should do, like feel less emotional, for example, is a valid thing to say. But for some individuals, letting go of that emotion is actually a second death. Sometimes we're more alive because of the pain. We're more alive because of our awareness of how fleeting life is. So different people have different ways of dealing with it. But especially as mothers, when you lose a child, the rest of your life is defined by how you mature through that experience. And for me, the first 10 years, actually the day that Estema died, I was on a train with my god sister, and as we were pulling into Reading from Paddington, it was February 10th, and I literally felt a piece of my heart just squeeze. And I said to Mary, I think my son has died, but they had already told me he wouldn't live more than a year. But he seemed to have been doing well. And I had him living with a foster mother in Bracknell because I really felt that if my son lives, I need to be able to be educated and not do this on welfare. I had an idea in my head of how I wanted us to live. But I also knew that I couldn't take care of this sick child by myself. So I co-parented with an assigned foster mother who I selected from 4 women. When I picked those women, I said, I don't care what religion you are, as long as you have something to sustain you when this child goes. I know I'm going to be okay. My life is defined by a set of values that help me to make sense of the world, but I don't know about you. So on February 10th, when I stepped off the train, I remember smelling the air. I could have sworn I smelled my mother's perfume come by me. And as I got on the bus and got into my home, the front door was open and my brother and sisters were sitting around just looking blank and lost. There I am, at this time I'm now 20 years old. My siblings are teenagers, and my brother said, no, he's not dead. Because the first thing I said is Semi dead? They said, no, apparently he's ill. He might just be sleeping. Do you want a cup of tea? And my sisters said to me, yes, he's dead. And I remember the scream that came from my body. I don't think I've ever heard or felt anything so primal, so guttural. It's as if it almost came from the right-hand side of me, outside of my body. And I just literally collapsed. And I've always defined my life as before that point and after that point. And I so wished in that moment that it wasn't true, that I was dreaming. And the fact of the matter is, my mother had left. She had been on that train station. She had been on that platform. She had gone to my son because we're Cameroonian. This woman's a white woman. My mother wanted to somehow find some comfort in the act of ritual to wash that baby, dress him one last time. And I remember asking, don't do anything till I get there. And I could only go in the morning, and social services sent a car for me. My mother had washed him. And when I held him, there is nothing like holding a dead body. There is a weight to it that is very different from a heavy object. There is a coldness that literally leads from their bones into yours. It is a different kind of cold. It's not like holding ice. It's not like holding a cold stone. It is the feeling of no more life. Death. Death is so specific, so very surreal. It is the other side of the place that we all know we must go to. We have no idea what it's like. I held my son for about 3 hours. I needed to do that. I did not want to hear anybody tell me, don't worry, it's going to be okay. It's not going to be okay. And it is my right to decide when it's going to be okay. I buried him on the 20th of February. It's cold in England at that time. I have very little memory of the funeral, except that he had a white coffin and there were lots of people there. And my brain had already shut down and decided, maybe when I think back on it, maybe I was saying to him, screw you, you left me. I'm pissed. I'm going off to take my lessons. I'm going off to do my exams. And for the next 3 to 5 years after that, I became very neglectful of myself. I avoided real emotions. I thought I was contagious, that if anybody came near me, their child would also die. I would be friends with my friends when they were pregnant, but the minute that baby was born, you would never see or hear from me again. I spent another 15 years reassembling my heart so that I could deal with this new version of myself. And as we all know, there isn't a word in the English language for a woman whose child is dead. You can be an orphan, you can be a widow, you can be a widower. But what is the name for a woman whose society, and sometimes we say this, it may not even be true, is not capable of shepherding life successfully into the world and beyond? So what you're left with is a silent, monotonous narrative that goes playing in your head of what if, maybe if I'd done something differently, around about this time such and such would happen. It is only there, and then there is that sense of guilt. If I'm not thinking about him every minute of the day, I'm a bad mother. I'm not grieving correctly. When is it time for me to feel happy? Do I have permission to be okay? But I reached a point where I could smile and laugh about Eseme and imagine and be grateful for the fact that I had the chance to live on with him because I knew he was going to. I just didn't know when. I tried to cram in as many experiences with him because I knew I would need that. So here we are, we've been dead 34 years, and it's still a new experience to deal with. The grief mutates as my understanding of the world continues. And when I met my husband, his child was sick with sickle cell, usually terminal. And it brought us together because I said to him, I know what it's like to have a sick child. I know what it's like to run to the hospital every minute. And my daughter, she died 3 years ago, my stepdaughter. So I had been through it once, and I foolishly thought, if and when Jasmine dies, I've done the rehearsal. There is no rehearsal for death, no matter how many times you do it, especially when it's your offspring. Because as parents, they are our opportunity at immortality. We're hoping that they will carry the best of us into the future. But now you have a termination of that potential. So that's my story. It's something I live with every day. I think there are days I deal well with it. There are times when I want to feel the depth of that tragedy and that pain and relive it again in my brain to reconcile it. But mostly, I am to the point of deep acceptance and joy that I even had this opportunity to know this baby. But this year was not the same. With so many mothers losing black sons, I did not do well with the anniversary of Eseme's birthday, because all of a sudden life just seems way too precious. There is no price, no words, and so it's been a little bit difficult.
Thank you so much. God, thank you so much, guys, for watching. Share, please. We all know that this is a very emotional topic. Yes, I actually had a few tears. To me, shedding tears, yes, I did. Shedding tears for the loss of a child is normal.
Yeah.
Because that's another way of showing love. The love, the word you said to your child, that's how sometimes we have to show them, we have to tell them that we still love them, though they are not here. And sometimes how we show that love is through tears. So today, guys, we are going to elaborate on the effect of prolonged grief on our mental health. We will look at some of those healing or soothing words that can be said to a bereaved parent, and how you as a family, as a friend, as a community can support the family that is bereaved, or that is support a parent, being the man or the woman, because July is Bereaved Parents Awareness Month, so we are concentrating on parents and bereaved men. So,
sorry, do you have your Facebook on close to you?
On my, let me see. No, I have it just on my phone.
Because when Isabella was talking, it was okay, but when you're talking, that's when the echo comes in.
Mm-hmm. I don't actually know why it's echoing, honestly.
I have a phone on.
Yeah, it's on, but it's not on Facebook.
Do you also have your laptop on?
Yeah, I'm using my laptop at the moment.
Okay, I think it's because you've got two audio sources going on at the same time. One of them needs to be switched off. I think it's your phone.
Okay, let me check and see. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Wait, what do you think?
Yeah, it is way better.
Is that okay?
Completely, 100%.
Okay. So before we introduce our guest who has just come into the studio, it is necessary for us to understand that that child loss occurs during pregnancy. It occurs soon after birth, within the first years of a child's life on earth. It can occur during childhood and adulthood. So anytime a parent loses a child, no matter the age, it is devastating. The child may just be 1 hour, 20 minutes, like mine was. The baby, it may be a miscarriage. That is still child loss. That's still a baby was lost. So when we say child loss, it's not only a baby. It can be the loss of a baby girl or a baby boy at any stage of their lives. So, Marie, you are welcome today, and thank you so much for honoring my invite.
Thank you. Such an honor to finally be on the platform with Paula and with you, Royal Warrior.
Thank you
Hello.
so much. Yeah. So before you came in, Marie, Sister Viola was giving she gave an introduction of herself, and she told us her story with her little boy, Seme, who is now a big boy in heaven. But before we continue, which is something I had forgotten, can we just observe maybe a minute of silence for all our babies who are in heaven before we continue, please? And may the souls of all the faithful departed through the mercy of God rest in peace. And then we are also sending our hugs, love, and kisses and hope to any parent who have experienced the loss of a child. Marie, we are going to come over to you to tell us how your relationship is with the topic of bereavement.
You know, I attempted suicide um, exactly 1 year after I lost my daughter,
Okay, tell
and I
us.
was even pregnant.
Yeah, tell us the how what happened, how you lost your child.
Are you able to?
Are you able
Well,
to?
we are, yeah, sure. Oh, come on, come on. Yeah, I am. I gave birth to her, and it's so funny. I've written about it. Like I went to the what we consider the best hospital in Douala, that is a reference hospital, and I took a private room because I knew it was going to be a girl, and I wanted to just spoil my daughter. And then that is the girl I lost. Like the very next day, and of course, I was so angry. I blamed her father because when I gave birth, 15 minutes later, she had some breathing problems and they had to put her in the incubator. And at night, they said there was a medication that was needed. And he asked the doctor if he could get it the next morning. I was on the bed. I was like, minutes before they took her away. So I was saying to myself, how can he even ask that kind of question? Like, can I get the medication tomorrow? My friend, get out and go and look for that thing wherever. It was 9 or 10 p.m. and he was probably just as exhausted. So when the baby died at about 4 a.m., I couldn't just take that. You know, I went under the bed in the hospital. I didn't want to talk to nobody. I just couldn't deal with that. And so I shut down and I got depressed and whatever was happening in my life anymore didn't make no sense. And well, 1 year after that, although I was 5 months pregnant, that's another story. I picked up a knife. So talking about how the loss of a child can affect a mother's mental health, I would be like, it can. I have known a mother when I was in Belgium who committed suicide 1 year after her daughter died.
Okay. Yeah. So we are still going to go into saying how the loss of a child affects our mental health. And thank you so much for the introduction and telling us the story about it's unclear, right?
Yes, Ashley.
So
I
before we
mean, there have been
continue,
other ones, a miscarriage and stuff, but Ash Clare was like the apex for me.
okay,
So
yeah.
sorry.
Okay. I'm so sorry for the loss of Aunt Claire. I know she's 12 in heaven, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. And before we continue, all four of us here, we will remember our children's names, starting with mine. My little boy is David Gaze, and he's going to be 3 years in heaven. And he lived for 1 hour 20 minutes. And we are also thinking of SMA, who is in heaven. Is he 34?
He lived
Jola?
for 7 months. He would be 35 now.
35. Okay. We are thinking about him as well. And King Curry, we are thinking about you and we are celebrating your birthday tomorrow. Right, Gwen?
Yeah, he'll be 9 tomorrow.
Okay. So over to you now. You tell us the story with King Curry again.
Oh,
Mm.
Corey was almost 6, a few months to 6 years when he passed. He was obviously a very smart boy in school. And that's how we found out that he had a brain tumor because one day I just got a call from his teacher. He wasn't responding in class to things that the teacher would expect him to respond to because normally he was one of the smartest kids in his class. So that raised a flag for the teacher. And before she knew it, he started drooling. So she took him to the school nurse and they called me. By the time I was talking to him, he was fine. He was like, Mommy, I'm okay. But I came to school anyway to pick him up. So I decided to take him to the emergency room. By the time we got to the emergency room, he was doing okay. But I remember the previous day, the teacher had reported he had a fall in school out of nowhere. So he normally didn't have any pre-existing conditions before that. So when we got to the hospital, he was doing fine. I explained to the doctor, I think he was having a seizure in school, and that's how he was drooling. But he never had that before. You know, the emergency rooms, they would take you up and down and all of that. And I had to go to work, so I left him with his dad. So apparently, as they were in the hospital, about to being discharged, he had an episode again. He was just dancing and started drooling. That's when they got the alarm, and then they had to go ahead and do the MRIs and found out he had a brain tumor. And that's how Corey's journey began. He fought for about 11 months. Around that time, most people fought for brain cancer. Unfortunately, he won the battle in another way. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And so sorry once more. I remember when Corey passed away, I was in Cameroon when his dad told me. So we will always remember him and we will always remember our children. And any of you watching, if you've lost a child before, so we have you in our prayer. So we are going to dive right into our question, starting with Marie. So the loss one impact. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, the loss of a loved one can impact on the survivors, that's us, can impact on our mental health. And one thing which Mr. Viola said earlier was that death has nothing to do with the person who died, but it has more. It has a lot to do with those of us left behind. So, Marie, can you tell us exactly how the loss of Aunt Claire has affected you as an individual and generally how it affects someone's mental health? especially if the grief has been prolonged?
Well, I already said how it affected me, affected my mental health, and that was another of the traumatic situations in my life, which kind of all make up my post-traumatic stress disorder diagnosis. Um, each person takes it differently. Uh, Maybe also because of the surrounding circumstances, of the support you got, a lot of other things, right? And like Paula was saying, the questions you ask yourself, was I a good mom? What could I have done to prevent this? All of those things. But the truth is that the child is gone. So, how it affects another person's mental health on a general spectrum is that there is this grief and it fluctuates. It's not like it's linear, like from Monday to Sunday, 10 a.m. each day, you cry. You can cry at 8, you cry at 5, you cry tomorrow, you don't cry on Wednesday. And people may not understand. Why are you crying like that? How many years today? There's some anniversaries that will come and go, nothing, some will come. So there's no kind of fast rule, but people don't understand that. And sometimes even you may want to be hard on yourself, like, I should have gotten over this by now. But it's a whole process to kind of like route your brain, your thought pattern. You have to repeat the same thing. And when you have lost a baby, what can replace that? Another baby? It's only that particular baby, but even that particular baby will not come back. So it is something like, go through the stages of grief anyhow, any day, any month. It is really erratic. And so people need to know that a mother who has lost a child has lost a part of themselves, because that child was a part of that woman right from the conception. It's like the man brings the sperm, the ovulation, or what you call it, the fertilization takes place in the woman and it stays in the woman. So that life grows up in the woman and then it comes out, that is, it comes out with part of you, the placenta. And then that life goes and you are still there. You're like, why couldn't I die and let this child live? I have already lived one. So I think we deal with that guilt, we deal with that need of constant assurance that it's not our fault, stuff like that. But people don't really get it that way. The more society and maybe even the people around you put pressure on you to get over it, the more you really don't get over it. Either you bottle up and pretend you have gotten over it, or you explode. And then they say, okay, well, she's crazy. Small picking so you are reacting like that. What if it was a 50-year-old child? So those kind of things that people say, sometimes it just make it worse for you. You can get so depressed. On the other hand, you bottle up, you don't talk, you don't do the things you used to do anymore. You even neglect the other children. It's not those other children, it is you, and it is the loss and the everything about that loss that is making you be that way. So there needs to be a lot of compassion, of understanding. I remember I talked with you once and I told you I never talked about that loss with my ex-husband, and I have just ruled him out. But I felt so bad, and I really held it against him for long because we never talked about it, never, and that's so wrong. We need to talk with the mothers. We need to just sit down by them while they cry, or just hold their hand. We need to do something. If not, they can sink. Before you know it, somebody has committed suicide. You say, I never saw the signs. Well,
They were there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A mother who has lost a child has lost a part of herself. That's perfectly right. After I lost my little boy, I till today I don't know if there's any other loss greater than the loss of a child. I still feel it. Yeah, how I lost mine was I was almost 21 weeks plus 5 days. My waters just went. Yeah, because I've had an experience with premature birth before, so it was kind of I'm already a high risk patient when I'm pregnant. So somehow that part was missed out in my so my cervix wasn't stitched. So one day I didn't feel all right. I went to the hospital. It's like then suddenly my water just broke and everything just leaked out and leaked out. So because before the baby was not yet up to 24 weeks, so the option I was given was you are not yet in labor. So what we can do is termination of pregnancy because your baby is still alive, or conservative management until you go into labor. And I couldn't I couldn't imagine the fact that I would allow that little boy still moving around in me to be terminated. So I said no to termination, and I was going to go with conservative management until whenever level kicks in. And I went on for 2 days, 3 days, and the baby like came out. He was already 2 weeks. He was already 22 weeks. So his leg came out. I mean, just like a baby will come out when it's time. But he came out with his leg for the next 2 days. There was still no labor, so I had to be induced because I had refused that I wasn't going to terminate the pregnancy. And and again, I knew that there are some hospitals who can save a baby who is 22 weeks, but some hospitals consider babies who are at 22 weeks not viable, so they cannot be resuscitated even if you give birth to them and they are still alive. But, but I was at a stage where I wanted to go so that that baby should live, because to me that little life, I felt like he was fighting in there, he was crying in there, holding on to me, holding to his own breath in order to live. Because normally when you're working for children, the baby's already vulnerable, you are already vulnerable. There are already high chances of you, the parent, having an infection and the baby having an infection as well. But I held on, and the little man held on until when I was induced, and then shortly after he was born at 22 weeks plus 2 days. And again, the little man lived for 1 hour, 20 minutes with no help, nothing until he gave up. So that's my story. That's how I lost my little boy. And he's going to be 3 years on the 11th of September in heaven. And his name is David J. We will always remember them.
David,
Yes, Ari. Sorry?
I didn't hear his full name.
David J's.
Okay.
Davy. It's actually David. So I shortened it and I hyphenated it David J. The cherished beloved here. Yeah. So assisted marriage, true. The loss of a child will affect us whether you are the mom or you are the parent. But it affects individuals differently. On our first episode, Gwen mentioned that there's no right or wrong way to do, but there's an unhealthy way to do. And Mary, you also mentioned that it is necessary to talk when you are grieving, especially the partner. Unfortunately, sometimes we get too sad, too emotional, too involved with the emotions going on around us because of the grief. We go through this roller coaster of emotions, and at times it's very easy to forget that there are other people around you who have also been affected by the loss of the baby, and like the dad or the siblings. And in the long run, if that is not sorted, it can also have a great effect on our mental health. And thank you so much for bringing that. So, so I'll go over to Gwen. When a parent endures the loss of a child at any age, the pain is quite unbearable. Then there are some moments where we really need friends, we really need family, we really need our loved ones to live by us. Sometimes you just need to hear a nice word, a good word, a healing or a soothing word from someone around you. Then, when you lost Corey, how was it handled? How did people console you?
So many ways. Sometimes I feel like I'm just, like Viola said, blurred from that moment, right? But thank God for modern technology. Still have videos and pictures that would bring me back to that moment. Unfortunately, when Corey died, I had so much going around me. We talked about this the other day. I felt like, or feel like, circumstances that were surrounding me at that time stole my time to grieve him the way I should have grieved him at that time, right? There was just so much to grieve at that time. At that time, I just finished having treatment, cancer treatment. I just finished with chemotherapy and surgeries and all that. Then he got sick, going through treatment, then we're going through divorce, and then he passed. It was just so much going on at the same time. So I cannot even figure out, is this grief being me grieving for the things I'm going through on my own? Is this grief that of him being sick, or is it him dying, or is it me going through a divorce, or it was just so much happening at the same time. So I cannot really figure out how my grief went through, but I'm happy how it went through in a whole nutshell. It's even harder when you're grieving and then you have to think of the other people around you. For instance, grieving Corey, I knew that the priority would be his sister. She was 9 when Corey died.
How old was she?
9.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it's even harder because you have to know how kids process things. It was just two of them. Her best friend, her everything. That's another level. Going through grief and then making sure you understand how she's grieving, how she's going through that, and then going through the fact that we're going through a divorce. So my grief was really stolen away from me because I had all these other things that I had to handle, right? But today we are in a better place. I'm happy that at this time, Courtney can talk about Corey and we laugh about it. Unlike before, she would just shut down. And the other day we were in a car, she does tutoring. So we went to a tutoring session and then we saw one of her classmates' older sister. So when we got into the car, she said, "Oh, mommy, I saw my classmate's older sister." I said, "What's she doing in tutoring? Why is your classmate not there?" She said, "I guess the older one is not doing well in school." I said, "Oh yeah, the older ones are always like that." So she, so she's the older one to Corey, right? So she turns around and tells me, "Well, now that Corey's dead, what are you gonna do?" So it means I'm stuck with her, even if she's not as smart as Corey was. So we all burst out laughing, and then it dawned on me that it's even relieving that we can talk about Corey and now smile and laugh about it. Then yesterday she asked me, "Mommy, what are we gonna do tomorrow, Sunday, for Corey's birthday?" Then I'm like, "What do you want to do?" I don't know what I want to do for his birthday. What do you want to do? I don't till now she hasn't told me what she wants to do, but I know she has a plan. So now I try to work my grief how she feels because she feels that if she talks about him most of the time, it's gonna set me into a mood where I'm gonna cry. Like I was telling you, AC, last time, how she would even say, "Oh, before talking about him, mommy, not that I want to make you mad, but," then she would say what she would say. So grief, on the other hand, uh, the worst kind of grief is when you grieve with regret. Like Miss Maria was saying earlier, and I was just telling myself how thankful I am to God that I never went through that. Currently, I'm a hospice nurse, so I see a lot of families going through grief and regret, and that is the worst grief you can ever go through because it takes you forever to heal. For me, I was lucky that I knew and I know that I did all I could. I did my best for my son when he was alive. And if I had the power to make him stay, I did all that I could in my power, but he still did not make it. So when he died, like we were saying last time, actually I grieved him before he died. I did anticipatory grieving more than I did grieve when he had already died. It was all the times with him in the hospital. I would cry with him, pray with him. I did all that grieving when he was still alive. So by the time he finally died, I I had done all my grieving. Not all, but most of it. But at this time I'm like, you know what? If you had the power, you, Corey, would have stayed with your mother. If you didn't stay, because it's not in our hands. And he did leave. So for me, grieving, I think, was a little easier when it comes to his death because I knew that, and I know that I did all that a mother could do for a child to keep him alive.
Thank you so much. Yes, when you grieving in regret, it's a very difficult place to be at. But
Yeah.
once you know that you did everything you could do, or everything you could have done, then the grief becomes easier. Yes,
Yeah,
there
but I always also say when you grieve and regret, the first thing to do to get over it is always to forgive yourself, even if you have those regrets. Like Miss Maria said, if you give yourself that opportunity to say, okay, I forgive myself for doing this, and knowing that he will forgive you on the other hand, that's the only way we will get past to grieve in a more easy way.
That's very true. And what are some of the? I know so many friends would have called you, visited you, or said things. But if you meet someone who is grieving, a parent who is grieving, what do you think are some of the things that you can tell them that you think will make them feel just a little bit better? It may not change the situation, and we all know that sometimes certain words being said, though they are meant well, can be quite hurtful. But what are some of those things that someone can say to you that you say, oh, you feel loved, you feel that this person cares?
Is this aimed at me?
No, to Gwen still, yeah.
Like I said, I do hospice, right? So I am fortunate to be in this place every day where I meet somebody who needs those encouraging words or who needs to know how am I going to get out of this? How am I even going to go through this? For me, when Corey died, most of the things that I remember now, it's not even the call or the financial help that people gave me a lot. The things that stay with me is the hugs that people gave me. Now I know most of my consolation because when I even go through my pictures now, I could feel those hugs. I have a lot of pictures that I actually made a collage of all the hugs that I got through Corey's funeral and all of that. So I give that back to especially my patient family. All I can do is, can I hug you? It's so healing to so many people. Some people are not touching, but I always just have to ask permission. Can I give you a hug? It's not just healing for that person. To me, it's even healing to me. I'm also fortunate that I get to talk about Corey all the time. Like Mary was saying, talk therapy for me is everything. Some people don't want to talk about it because they think it hurts you. Oh, if I talk about Corey, it's gonna bring her memory, and that's gonna hurt her. But no, even if I cry, it takes off that burden. Even if I talk about him, most of the time I talk about him, chances I will smile. Then I would even cry. Even if I cry the next minute, I'm gonna say something about him that brings joy, that brings back the life about him. So talk therapy is awesome. Let's stop thinking that let's not talk about him. Like so many people would even stop calling you because they don't want to call her because she's gonna start crying. It's like they're preventing you from getting to that place to grieve. But no matter what, you still have to get there, and that's the only way you get out of it, by going through that grief. So talk therapy, I try to talk to people that are going through grief. Let's talk about it. Tell me good stories about Corey. Like when I go to my patients and their families, I want to hear those beautiful things. Let's not talk about him laying on the bed or the last minute when he was dying. That's only going to bring us hurt. Let's think about those good moments, right? For me, I'm fortunate that Corey had lived for 5 years plus, that I have those memories to talk about. Unfortunately, maybe for you in this married and in travel, you don't have such memories. But to people that are in and they have those memories, I want to hear them. Let's talk about them. Tell me more about your child. So those things really actually help. I talk about Corey the least opportunity I get, and it
That,
definitely brings me joy.
yeah, thank you so much for that. Yeah, so one of the things you can actually say to a parent who has lost a child is you just ask them, tell me about your child. Some people find it a bit uncomfortable, but it's quite helpful if you
Right.
talk about your child who is in heaven. Each time I mention my little boy's name, Baby James, the name itself to me is quite sexy, and it's so. Each time I mention it, I always smile, even though I know I will never call David Grace, and I hear him running down the stairs, or he says "Mom," and he's running towards me. But I feel good when I pronounce that name, David James. So over to you now, Sister V. So the worst love that a parent can ever feel or can ever experience is the love of a son or a daughter. In our culture, or traditionally, almost everywhere, it's expected that children, our children, are supposed to bury us. But unfortunately, as we have all experienced, we've had to bury a child. And the pain is so painful. As I always say, the pain sometimes you not even sometimes you cannot rate, you cannot point where it hurts. At times you actually feel like there's a sword that has been pierced through your heart, and you can feel it there, you can see it there, but no person around you sees it. And when this happens, we can actually go into isolation. We can actually lose interest in people around us. So, what are some of the possible ways through which a bereaved parent can be supported by both friends, family, and even the entire community?
Well, I can only speak from my own perspective. First of all, feelings are neither good or bad. It's what we do with them and how we express them and communicate them.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't feel pain, we feel numbness, completely cut off and incapable of accessing the emotions that signpost the journey of where you are in grief, which is why maybe 10, 15, 20, 30 years later, out of nowhere, it can hit you. Or you think you're okay and then things change. Sometimes we don't want to hear a damn thing from anybody. Sometimes we need silence. Don't talk. It's best to ask, what can I do for you? I love what Gwen said. Sometimes just a hug, just holding hands. When my daughter died 3 years ago, a friend sent me a seafood pie. It was like being hugged from the inside. This thing was so warm and carbohydrates, good fish, that food, and the emotion that I experienced when I remember her saying, "This might make you feel better," or my husband bringing me a piece of chocolate, or me putting on something that he wants to listen to. We assume, I think, and especially in our culture, that there is a playbook that everybody has to go through so that everybody can shut the hell up and get on with whatever it is that we call daily life. And that's not always appropriate. In my case, because I wasn't allowed to even tell anybody he'd been alive, I had to suffer that tragedy and that guilt and that grief with guilt, with regret. And it was even mentioned in the magazine. Woman's Own back then posted a very nasty story about a black woman that abandoned her child, and a good white woman had to come and take care of him. And that isn't what happened at all. That to me is even worse than the life and death of a sinner. So there is so many complex things that go on, just like you said, Gwen, all the things going on around at the same time that you can't pull the threads in order to weave a cloth that is comprehensive enough for you to say, this is what it is, because that's just not there. Words that you can say to people, only tell them what they ask you to say. Don't assume that you're going to come and make all those feelings manageable. Ask. Sometimes you need to ask, what can I do? Do you need me to help make you feel better? Do you want me to sit with you? Do you want to talk? And any topic they want to talk about is fine. And it's true, you said so earlier. Some people say, look, you've been going about this a long time. Now, I know this hasn't got anything to do with children, but Mary, do you remember when I was really, really, really upset that Prince died?
I remember.
That, till now, is I can feel the stress in my stomach. We all experience that, and I never met the man. And it's very different from when my son died. But when a parent loses their child, what they need is closeness of community, understanding, and they want to be able to have the intimacy to express exactly how they feel without people trying to tell them whether the feeling or the reactions are right or wrong. Don't try to tell people. But I also recommend that you keep a diary. It will help you to navigate the journey and make sense of it a little bit later. And I wish I had done that. Luckily, I have a really good memory. So I do remember the last 34 years of his death and all the things that I did that were self-abusive and destructive as well as healing. So just be there for people. Know that there's intimacy and that you don't always have to have words to say. Take each situation uniquely. And every death that happens around that person thereafter will be a bit of a signpost. I hope that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for that. And Marie, how can a parent be helped, especially if their mental health has been affected? Well, we all know that if you are looking at the model of grief, one of the stages is depression. What if a parent has been stuck in this state for too long? How can they be helped?
There's something. What is the word?
You know, when you look at the stages of grief, yeah, the model of grief where you have denial, acceptance, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So at the depression stage, what if a parent has been stuck in that depression state for too long? How can that parent be helped? How can a parent's mental health be helped at that point? Because if they get stuck for too long and they're depressed, then there's something wrong, and which means they need help. So what can they do to help?
Well, Gwen talked about talk therapy, and I'm a psychotherapist, so I can only say seek professional help. Too long, how much is too long, first of all? And have they been constantly in that stage? And how have they been reacting and acting during that too long stage?
Yeah.
All of those things, we will have to look at those things. And I think that to help somebody, don't put the person in a tight position anymore. Then the person is going to defend themselves and are not going to open themselves up to help. So you have to remember that there should be no blaming. Even if you feel they have been there for too long, you're not the one, you don't tell it to them. Leave it to the therapist to tell it to them in a kind of way like, okay, what next can we do? What next can we do? And then they're going to unfold that everything and then move on. But if you are using your mouth to kind of like insult them and say you've been on this thing for too long, like mine once he asked me, are you the only one who lost that child? I was like, that I stopped asking. I didn't want to talk about it again. Nobody talked about it with me. I didn't talk about it with nobody until I left this country and I came back. So I may have stayed in my own state for too long. That would not have been anybody's problem. Nobody may have even known. Sometimes that's the best people don't even know, right? You
Yeah.
mask it up. Yeah, you put the fonts, and then inside you, you know what you're going through. So please go seek for help, see a therapist, talk to other people, other mothers, for example. I believe so much in the power of peer support, people sharing with each other, holding each other's hand, even virtually. For me, I find a lot of support and joy with my virtual family, especially in things like grief, mental health, and stuff like that. So I don't joke with my virtual family. There might be very few, but I'm very grateful for that. That's something that I can advise people to do. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. So talk therapy is very helpful. Joining groups of parents who have lost a child before, where you have similar stories to talk about. Prayer support is good. And as Sister Vivi said, journaling. Journaling is one of the things that helped me quite a lot. I have this book where um my book will be coming out soon on grief, from grief to grief. So I wrote and I wrote. I have, in that book, in that manuscript, you have the rawest of my emotions about anyone that I could blame or anything that I could blame, and all the questions that I asked myself: what did I do wrong? Where did I go wrong? What is it that I could have done that I didn't do? So I found particularly that writing was very, very helpful because I started writing the first day I stepped into the hospital. And I even wrote down the names of nurses, of midwives, the doctors, and how their relationship with me affected me during the period and afterwards. And I discovered that it really, really helps a lot. And one of the things on this show is we help individuals to give a voice to these issues, which most often people find them a taboo, or people just find them uncomfortable or very sad to talk about. So, because I know what we give a voice to has the power to change our life, it has the power to actually heal our lives and even heal someone else. And so it's very, very necessary for us to talk about grief because it kind of lessens the pain, it lessens the burden that we've been carrying for too long. I remember was the last we married that we actually in October that you and I had a show on child loss, which we actually shared our experiences. And that really helps a lot. And if there's anyone watching out there and you've experienced the loss of a child and you haven't been able to talk about it, we are here. We have different areas of experience. Mary is a psychotherapy. All of us we have some form of experience because I believe that experience is what we gain when we didn't get what we wanted. Because us myself losing my child has actually I may never have him back, but I've gained some form of experience. I've gained some form of knowledge with his passing, and I can actually pass that knowledge or pass that information in the form of educating, empowering, and inspiring other parents out there. So we've been on the show for about an hour. We are moving on to the last part of the show where each and every one of us we will say or any other thing that we think we can talk about this topic. We say how our grief journey was and what are some of the strategies, what are some of the things that we did to smile after this grief, to be able to smile after this tears that we shed for our babies. So Gwen, can we come to you?
Just so I get it, you said some of the things that we did to.
Yeah, yeah, because normally when we are grieving, at times you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. You don't see the reason. You don't see any reason for smiling or being happy. But looking at just our faces right now, I know we have a reason to smile even when our children are not here and no longer here. So what is the particular thing that you do to you may not have completely moved forward with the grief because it's always going to be there. But how has your journey been from then till now what were your strategies?
Hmm. It's just like going through the stages of grief, right? I think with every stage, I did adapt a new strategy, how to go with it. I just take life each day as it comes. Like we say, some days, like you all know, you get up and you're moody. Some days I'm happy. Most of the time, I found out that the things that make me smile or cry most of the time is when I'm driving around and I'm in the car. I'm listening to one music and just make me cry. Crying is a good thing, I realize. The moment I would cry, I make sure I cry so hard that I sob so hard and I wipe my tears and then I keep driving. Know that for the next 1 hour I'm gonna drive, I'm gonna smile most of the time because I've actually just gone through that moment and breathe and missing him. I think grieving, like Ms. Bauer said, it's not about the person. What brings me hope, tranquility is that I know that Corey is no more in pain, right? And even if I am hurting, it's just because I miss him. It's not that he is suffering, or it's not that he's in pain anymore. I ask myself sometimes, would I rather him be here with me and go through the things that he was going through, and or just be in heaven and be at peace? Those questions really bring me back to reality, and I don't have so many answers for the questions that I have. Another thing that takes me through is dreams. Before Corey would always come into to me in my dreams. He sends me messages to people I don't even know, who don't even know him, even through his sister. Just bring me peace. Most of the dreams people had about him was him being happy. What else more would I want from him than being happy? So I realized that going through this process is all about me. It's not about him. It's all about me and his sister. And my priority was Courtney handling it in the way I would she can handle it best. So we did seek counseling. We did go through counseling for a very long time, especially her. And we are still struggling. We're still seeking best counselors to take us through the day. Every day we just handle it differently. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yes, it's very hard. Yeah, I also struggle. I struggle quite a lot, and at some point I actually turned around, and because one of the persons I blamed a lot was God. Unfortunately, yeah, I actually had to ask him, why did you have to give my baby at 40 when I just turned 40 and you let me get pregnant, and then you just took that beautiful dream away. So it kind of affected my faith. But at some point, I turned everything around and I told him, I want you to tell me what you want me to do with these experiences because I no longer understand them. And then I also into I also looked at other women, other people who have experienced child loss. And I looked at the 1 hour, 20 minutes that my little boy lived, and I said, at least I have a few hours to be with him. At least we had a little bit of life. Why should I cry so much more? There are other people out there who have never experienced that little breath. It may just be that one, two cough that you had on my chest here. So I turned that grief into gratitude. I turned the 1 hour, 20 minutes into memory. And it's not easy, but you can always turn the grief around and look at something positive in it that will make you happy. As Gwen said, grieving is most often or should be about you, how you want to feel after it. It's very easy for us to stay in those emotions. It's very easy just to stay there. You wake up in the morning, you don't leave your room, you don't leave your bed, and you isolate yourself. But at the same time, we can also push ourselves to go out of it. We will always be, the pain will always be there. But sometimes they say time heals. At least I can agree to an extent. It feels because the smile I have on my face now or today is not the one I had 2.5 years ago. And I know it applies with each and every one of you. And over to you, Marie. How did you cope? What were your coping mechanisms during that period?
Not during that period, long after. I
Okay.
didn't, I bottled it up. I just knew that I had to leave. So I carried that with me. I struggled, and that was in 2008, and I sought professional help in 2013. So that was like what, 5 years of carrying that alone, and then I made that decision in 2013. I was releasing her, and I was going to use that to do something, right? So what I'm doing now is what gives me joy, and the fact that people, I will also die. We are all mortals. I'm like, anyway, whatever be the case, we will all have gone someday or the other. So my angel is there wherever, and I'm just doing what I'm doing here. And one day I'm going to fly too.
Thank you so much, Marie. Thanks a lot for that. And over to you, Sister Vivi. What were your coping mechanisms, your coping strategies?
They were limited because I really wasn't allowed to tell anybody about it, and certainly not argue right. But for me personally, the way that I coped with it was I danced a lot. I wrote a lot. I also want to address the fact that I've been through this journey for a very, very long time compared to my dear friends and sisters on this call. And I have come to realize that my goal isn't to see light at the end of the tunnel. My goal as a coach has always been a healthy embracing of all of the emotions involved in being alive. So I'm very comfortable with being absolutely freaking miserable because it doesn't last forever. It's the opposite to when I'm absolutely ecstatic with joy. My coping, I therefore think, has been accepting and embracing the journey and trying to manipulate it because I'm not uncomfortable with any of the emotions involved in the life and death of Islam. I'm okay. I also don't have this idea that I'm going to see him again. I see the world slightly differently. Things have gone on. That's it. He came to me for a reason, and it was a privilege. If he had never come to be with me, there was a lot of me that would still be quite unpleasant, immature, ridiculous, and stupid. He did a lot for me, and there's such deep gratitude, and I think that's what frames this experience for me. So it's not so, it gets better, it changes. I cope because I had later on close community. But at the time, it was the inner dialogue that I had with myself, and my mom, that kept me going.
Wow, that's really wonderful. So family as well. Family plays a very important role for
Absolutely.
someone who is grieving. Yeah. One of the things I coped with as well was singing, because while I was at the hospital, I had a particular collection that was a collection of songs that I was listening. So I've listened to them. If one could listen to a song and the song brings back someone to life, probably you would have.
Well, this is what I was talking about. I danced a lot. There was this one particular song. It was a dance song called Eye to Eye. The song would cause me to cry like there was no tomorrow, but I would play it and dance. And for a while, I couldn't play it because of the way it made me feel. But now I put it on, it just brings back all of the memories of that time and how much I've been through. That still has a very special place in my heart.
All right. That's very brilliant. So we are just about to round up now, and I really want to thank all of you for your time and for being able to share your story with us today. I'm really grateful. Thank you so much, Gwen. And I'm looking forward to us celebrating Corey's birthday tomorrow.
Happy birthday, Corey.
And do you have any final words to say to our viewers or to anyone out there?
Say that again. Okay, great.
Final word.
Life is for living. We are all going to die. There's nothing you can do about it. Live. Live like you're going to die. Stop trying to plan and rehearse the ending. You have no control over that. The worst thing that will happen is you're going to die. Somebody's going to buy you a coffin, and they're not going to send you an invoice, not in heaven and not in hell. You may not, or you may see your loved ones. If that idea keeps you happy, great. Just make sure you make yourself available to life. Live in the honor of those that you've lost. And remember that your children, even though they're not here, imagine if they were watching you being your most glorious self. It's the best that you can do.
Thank you. Over to you, Gwen. Any final words before we go?
Definitely. It's very important for us to know that our lives, most of the time, is not for us. It is for others.
Mm-hmm.
The things that happen to us is not to punish us. It's either to teach us a lesson or to teach the world a lesson. And when we come to terms with that, we will see that we will not question God a lot about the things that happen, because we want to see the reason why the things happen the way they happen, because there's always a reason why it happened. And the moment we find that reason and the purpose why it happens, and we act on it, then it makes the journey easier.
Thank you so much. So now, guys, we've come to the end of our show, and thank you so much for watching. It's been a pleasure. And next week, or the next 2 weeks, we are going to have the third episode, or the last episode of this 3-part series. We will be looking into bereavement and parents and the siblings of the lost one. So if there's any sibling out there, so if Courtney is happy for you to be with her on the show, we're happy to hear from her. So it's a nice evening to everyone. And thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.
Yes, and happy weekend.
Have a
Bye-bye.
great
Thank you. Nice meeting you, Bella.
Bye-bye.